Max hasn't been on his usual patrol since we've had so much snow, and the bunnies have taken over. But they'll learn.
I know. Howdy folks, I'm working on the Oliver 1650 again. We're getting it fixed up, but it still has some ongoing problems, which I guess isn't surprising for a 56-year-old tractor. So the big thing I'm trying to fix is it has a hard time starting, and when it does start, it runs rough. And we made a whole video about that same issue, I think it's been over a year and a half ago now. And at that time, it would not start without ether. You had to give it a little spray, and then it would usually start. But in that video, we took the top off the injection pump, found that the metering valve was sticking. I cleaned that up, freed everything up. We found some junk in the bottom of the fuel tank. I had the fuel tank cleaned, replaced the fuel filters, And we kind of got it sorted out. It ran pretty good. It would start without ether, and I thought we had it licked. Then it got into a funk where every time you started it, it would just peg right out to full throttle. And it would stay there for an uncomfortably long amount of time. Then it would settle down, and it would be okay. Then it got into another funk where every time you drop the throttle back to idle, the RPMs would fall and it would sometimes die, or it would kind of bounce around, or the idle would be too low or too high. So something was sticking in the linkage for the governor, I suspect. And I had to reset the idle speed several times, and then it kind of snapped out of that, and it got to where it would start just fine, and the throttle response was normal. But when you started it, it had a definite misfire, and it would take several minutes for it to hit on all 6 cylinders. I figured that in addition to the fuel pump, the injection pump having problems, it also had problems with the injectors. Because usually when you have a misfire on a rotary injection pump that's isolated to 1 or 2 cylinders, it's going to be the injectors, because the pump treats every cylinder the same. So anyway, while I was at Area Diesel Service having the pump for the all-terrain forklift rebuilt, I had them take a look at the pump for this tractor. And they made a whole video where they went through the pump. Corey did his magic and cleaned up all the crud inside of the injection pump, got it working, at factory spec. They also went through the injectors. I think they were leaking down pretty bad, and the nozzles were bad. It wasn't spraying correctly, so they got that all tuned up for me. So we're going to put that stuff back on, and I think that'll take care of the engine issues. We're also going to set the valves. I'm sure that will help. And then it needs the oil changed. I haven't done that I think it's been a year since I did that, so we'll do that at the same time. While I was in here, we got on the slippery slope of repairs, and I noticed that there's a broken bolt in the exhaust manifold. We should probably deal with that. It's leaking oil out of the console. Looks like the power steering hoses are leaking. The PTO shaft is leaking pretty bad in the back, plus it's got some other hoses for the rear hydraulics that I want to replace. So figure we might as well take the hood off, get the fuel tank out, get access to those power steering hoses. I think 2 are leaking. We're probably going to replace all of them because you cannot access it with the hood or with the fuel tank installed, so now is the time to do it. This is the back side of the console. The steering wheel's up there. This is the gauges and wiring harness and whatnot. That's the steering motor right there. It has 4 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 1 1/2 inch and 3 3/8 lines. I think the 1/2 inch lines are return. The other 3 lines are pressure lines. They're steel, so there's a junction here, basically, and then it's pre-bent steel up to about here, then it's hose, and then there's custom fittings on the other end. The reason it has hoses is because this is a tilt steering wheel. So, yeah. I briefly inquired about buying these hoses from the dealership, pre-bent, ready to go. They're pretty wishy-washy on whether or not they're even available. It seems like, at a minimum, not all of them are available, and the prices are insane, $150 a piece. So, I do not want to spend $600 replacing power steering lines. So we're going to do something a little different. We're going to eliminate the bent part of the line, and we'll just use regular hose. They're inverted flare up on this end, and then down here they're 37-degree flare. So we should be able to use standard fittings and hose. There's plenty of room here to route hoses, so I think it'll be fine. Also, this one here looks like it's been replaced before. Actually, I think 2 of them have been replaced. This one and this one, but 3 of them are leaking that I can see. So I may regret this later, but I think I'm going to leave this top one alone. I don't see any sign that it's leaking at all. I think it's been replaced pretty recently. Well, this filter is actually made in Venezuela, mecca for quality manufacturing. Anyway, this is the new filter. It has no writing on it. This part number is just written on a cheap paper tag that's already fading. Then it comes with 2 square cut O-rings. The top one might work, but the bottom one, like, it's way too big to ever seal up on that base. So I don't know what the deal is. I went to the Baldwin website, looked it up by application. This is the correct filter. But there's absolutely no way that can work. It just can't. So, yeah. So the primary fuel filter is on the other side of the engine. It's an old school sock style filter. Oh, don't tell me that's the wrong one. It's the wrong one. God dang it. Well, false alarm. It is the right filter. I just didn't have it installed all the way. The engine oil filter is also a sock style, so I'll go ahead and swap that out. This is old school stuff, 1965. Then this is the block heater here. Somebody added it on. It just ties into the cooler lines that run back to the cooler for the hydropower. And the cord has completely disintegrated, so I'd like to avoid insurance claims if possible. We'll go ahead and get rid of that. And then it's supposed to be up here in the bottom of the elbow for the lower radiator hose. There's a plug here you can take out and put in a block heater. So I'll see if I can find something that'll fit that. Also, I think that the transfer pump here is leaking. Well, I know it leaks externally, which means I'm sure that it leaks internally also, so it could be leaking fuel into the oil. I tried to buy a whole new one, couldn't get a whole new one, so I'll see if I can get a kit and rebuild that, but it probably won't happen. Won't happen right away. It's always a fight with these stupid sock filters. No wonder they stopped using them. That hex is pretty well stripped. Can't imagine why. Anyway, that's good. The filter has a flat part and a cone-shaped part. The cone-shaped part has to go up inside the canister. Well, thanks to our friends at Napa, I think we have the right filter. This is a Wix filter, of course. Part number 33165. Or Napa number 3165. This filter is identical to the old filter, except one says CarQuest and one says Napa. So I guess CarQuest has changed suppliers. So we'll go with the Napa. It's got the same made in Venezuela quality. Let's see. Put a little diesel on here. Cool. Alright guys, finally back to work on the Oliver. It's been almost 2 weeks. It's just been a madhouse around here. Anyway, you might hear the coolant draining in the background. We're going to install this block heater. It's supposed to be a 3/4 inch MPT thread that should thread right into that lower radiator hose elbow. Hopefully that's right. There's the part number from CATS if anybody's curious, 30307. On the power steering hoses, this is what I've made up. So I actually bought all the fittings and the hose, and then my dad has an ancient weatherhead crimper that they drug over on the Mayflower. And if you pour enough oil through it, it will make a pretty good crimp. Okay.
Yeah, that made a mess.
This is like one of my projects. So we've crimped up replacements for these two lines. So yeah, this one will replace this one. It's 3/8 inverted flare on this end and 37-degree male JIC on the other end. Pretty much the same for this one. But this one is a problem. It's a real abortion. So it's 1/2-inch tube on this end with a 1/2-inch, well, whatever it is, 37-degree flare, JIC male on that end. Then it goes to a 3/8 hose. Then this is a 3/8 tube inverted flare with an 11/16 thread. So the other threads are all 5/8. Still the same size flare, but a different thread. So yeah, I cannot get this thread. I've spent a lot of time in the world of machining, you know, making valve blocks and stuff, cutting ports, SAE ports and whatnot. I was not even aware that there was an 11/16 thread. It's a real oddball. So what we're gonna do is use these compression fittings. Now I know I'm not a big compression fitting fan, but these aren't, you know, hardware store brass compression fittings. These are designed for hydraulic pressure. So it has a steel ferrule, and I believe the small one's rated for 4,200 PSI and the big one's like 3,800 or something like that. There we go. I'm pretty sure you're supposed to tighten these compression fittings until they bottom out. There. Well, it's not perfect, but I think it'll work. We still have the ability to tilt our steering wheel. And this one here may rub against the fuel tank, but shouldn't be a big deal. It's not like you're moving the steering wheel constantly. So yeah, that'll work. This one here, the compression fitting one, ended up being a little bit too long. I kind of had to tweak that a little bit to make it fit. Not super happy with how that turned out, but I think it'll be okay. If it's a problem, we'll just chop it off here or somewhere closer, maybe even down here, and run a longer piece of hose. Also, the new block heater is installed, and I ran a new piece of 5/8 heater hose back to the hydropower cooler so we can get rid of all this junk. All right, folks, we have a 22-pound shipment from Area Diesel Service. Check out how well packed this stuff is. Wow. Vacuum sealed with the, I believe it's called VCI paper, corrosion inhibiting paper. There's the fittings. Well, there must be a mistake. There's no way this is the scummy, crusty pile of junk I took down there. Yeah, Okay, guys, this is the Standardine / Rusamaster DBG series pump. Corey from Area Diesel Service, he's waved his magic wand over it, exorcised all the demons, run it off on the test stand. He says it's good to go. They made a full video about rebuilding this pump or repairing this pump. Hour and 20 something minutes long. It's fantastic. They go into every detail. It had some problems. He used phrases like, close to the worst I've ever seen, can't believe it ran, etc. It was pretty disgusting inside. Also, it looks like the rotor and head are pretty worn. You know, the main important pumping part of the pump, because it had already been turned up a little bit, and he had to turn it up even more to get it to the correct fuel delivery. So she's got some hours on her, but he said it's okay. Yeah, fantastic. Yeehaw. Now they also made a full video about repairing these injectors. I believe it just got posted this afternoon. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but Curtis told me they were pretty bad. He said they were leaking down and the nozzles were bad. So yeah, it looks like it has new nozzles. I suspected it had some major problems with the injectors. So yeah, fantastic. Okay. We're going to install the injection pump. First step is we need to install these umbrella seals to the drive shaft. And this is tricky. I actually asked them to send me a couple of extra umbrella seals because it's really easy to tear these seals putting them on. I know there's a special tool for when you install the pump over top the seals that collapses the seal down. But I'm guessing there must also be a special tool for this part, because it's really easy to tear them going on this shaft. Yeah, but we're not in the right groove. Okay, that was the easy one. Well, the second one faces the opposite direction. And what I found the best thing to do, or what works for me anyway, is to fold it inside out. At least for this part where you're getting it over the top of the drive tang here. Now, I don't know if we should get it in the groove first and then flip it, or flip it and then get it in the groove. I guess it doesn't matter. There we go. That seemed too easy. Well, this is where that special tool would come in. It clamps over top of the seal. It collapses it so that it'll slide into this bronze bushing a little easier. There we go. Just don't want to roll that seal over. You'll end up with fuel in the crankcase. It's been a while since I did this. I think these are right. Fine thread.
So this pump has 3 bolts. The other one only had 2. And that back one's kind of a pain. I've been using this angle wrench. Lets me sneak right in there. I'll have to check the timing, but that should be pretty close. I marked the housing before I took it off. And our timing marks are aligned, so we're good. Now this timing mark towards the front, Corey made that when he rebuilt the pump. He set the timing mark on that new one-piece weight cage using the actual standardized timing tool. So we know that that's 100% correct. This engine gets timed off of the flywheel. So the spec for the 1650 with indirect injection is 4 degrees before top dead center. So the 1600 was 7 degrees before top dead center, and then the later model direct injected engines were only 2 degrees. Anyway, it's only marked here with top dead center. That's that mark at the bottom that you see. There's no 4-degree mark. So to figure it out, I just did the math, assuming that's a 12-inch diameter right there where the pointer is. 4 degrees is like 0.4 inches. It's roughly the width of my finger. And you see it's right on the money. Okay, injector time. I've already cleaned the bores out with a brush and then just blown out all the debris. And they have new copper sealing washers. These numbers don't seem to mean anything. I found at least 3 of them now that are stamped 1. So they should be all the same. This injector hold down bolts get torqued to 20 foot-pounds. Okay, got all the fuel injection spaghetti installed. Gets pretty busy over here with 6 cylinders. The last piece, well, let's see. I changed the return lines around. I'm pretty sure they're supposed to be like this, where the one side loops behind the injector, here and here. Before they would hang down and there was no way to access the nuts for the injection lines. It made it really difficult to bleed them out. Anyway, the last step is this flexible hose that runs from the number 6 injector up to the fuel tank, but it's in really sad shape. In fact, yeah, I can just tear it right in half. So the fuel line is 3/16 inverted flare, and it's a swivel on one end and fixed on the other end. So to replicate that, what I did is just bought a short piece of NICOP brake line, flared on both ends, and I cut the ends off. Then I used my flaring tool, the first stage of the inverted flare process, to make a little barb. Then we'll just use some 3/16 fuel hose. About yay long. Stick on one of these permanent crimp hose clamps. A little bit of lube. Like so. And we'll crimp it down. That's that. I actually put a 90-degree bend in the other end just to make it a little bit easier. But yeah, that should work fine. I've used this process to replicate fuel lines before. It seems to work fine. I'm going to go through and set the valve lash. It's pretty straightforward. The spec is 30 thousandths on the exhaust, 20 thousandths on the intake. So it's a little loose on the intake and a little bit tight on the exhaust. That's to be expected. The exhaust valves are the ones that sink, especially on a diesel engine. They get worn and they move up in the head. Well, there's lots of ways to set the valves. My suggestion would be not to overthink it. The way I usually do it on an inline 6-cylinder engine is using the companion cylinder theory. So cylinder number 1 is in top dead center compression. That means cylinder number 6 should be in valve overlap. Then we're going to bar the engine over. Our firing order 153624, right? Yeah. So once we set cylinder number 1, we'll bar the engine over and we'll look for overlap on the next cylinder. So because cylinder number 6 is the one that's currently in overlap, you gotta think about this. The next one that comes up is going to be cylinder number 2 going into overlap, which means we're going to set cylinder number 5. Anyway, you go through the order that way. So you anticipate your overlap on the next cylinder in the firing order, and then you set the companion cylinder. If that's too complicated for you, all you got to do is look for a valve that's pushed down, that's open, and then set the opposite valve on that cylinder. So you see right here, cylinder number 2, the exhaust valve is open. We can set the intake valve on that cylinder and just keep barring it over and making your adjustments as each valve gets pushed down in sequence. Yeah, don't overcomplicate it. There we go. I've seen a lot of arguments too about how much drag to have on the feeler gauge and that kind of stuff. Again, don't overthink it. Most engines, they give you a tolerance plus or minus 1,000th. Some engines even give you plus or minus 2 thousandths. Really isn't that big of a deal. It has a small effect on timing, but really, as long as there's a gap, you'll be okay. What you don't want is for the valve to be held open. That's how you burn up a valve. So a little bit too much gap, not a problem. A little bit, if the gap's too small, that can be dangerous. And also pay attention, because I just set that valve wrong. That's a 20 thousandths gauge, 0.5 millimeter. It's supposed to be 30. Let's try that again. Also, a smarter person, smarter than me, might have done this before installing the injectors, so it's easy to turn the engine over. Oh well. We should see cylinder 4 come into valve overlap. Right there. So the, intake valve? No. Exhaust valve just closed and the intake valve just opened. So it's starting its intake stroke. So now we can set its companion cylinder, number 3. Those valves should both be closed. Got a new valve cover gasket. Unfortunately, it's the old cork style gasket. Well, these cork gaskets, they almost always leak. They leaked when they were new, and these surfaces are far from new now. So we're going to use a little bit of an insurance policy. I put some on the top side. And you have to just kind of decide how you want to do it. So if this was an engine we just overhauled, and we're going to have to pull the cover back off to retorque the head bolts and reset the valves. Usually I'll stick down the top side to the cover, and then I'll put a layer of grease here so that it doesn't stick to the head. In this case, since we're not going to be taking the valve cover back off anytime soon, I'm going to go ahead and glue up both sides. Just a little bit.
Just put a little bit of RTV on these washers. I even got a brand new air filter. Figure out how to put it in. Well, I guess we should at least try to get this broken exhaust manifold bolt out. But I'm feeling lazy. I don't want to take the manifold off. So we're going to try to drill it out through the manifold. If it doesn't work, then we'll just forget about it. It's not really that big of a problem. This is not a turbocharged engine, and I mean, it's a tractor. It's already loud, so a little bit of ticking from the exhaust manifold isn't going to hurt anything. So probably the biggest challenge with broken off bolts is that they never break off flat, or usually they don't anyway. This one's no exception. It was higher on the side towards you guys. So what I'm doing right now, sorry, I kind of jumped the gun. I'm just using a 7/16 drill bit to try to get the, how do I want to say this? To try to clean up the end of the bolt so that we can drill it out. This is a 3/8 bolt, by the way. I don't know if my left-hand drill bits are long enough to do this or not. Pretty stubby. Let's see what happens. Well, we're getting somewhere. I drilled it out to, what, 9/64 or 19/64? Whatever one step is below 5/16, which is the tap drill size for this hole. And then I ran a tap into it, and I pushed out this little piece here, which is all that's left of the bolt. But now we got to get that thing out of there. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. I may have to just kind of wedge it in the bottom and then use the drill bit to turn it into chips. Okay, I think we're good. And don't freak out if you have, you know, some damage to the threads or, you know, whatever. If it doesn't look like brand new inside that tapped hole, it won't matter. Especially not with a cast iron head. If it was aluminum, we might have to worry a little bit more, you know, but there's no reason to go putting heel coils in or anything like that if you don't have a major problem. Click! Well, if we had a fuel tank, we could try to start it. So I had this tank cleaned out back when we first started having problems with the injection pump, and it still looks pretty good. The only rust really is up in the neck, but that's pretty normal. The fuel tank is installed, plumbed up, and filled up. Now we have to bleed it. First up is the primary fuel filter. There is a bleed screw on the top. It takes a special service tool, but I'm not going to bleed it there. I don't think there's any point. The whole system's been drained, so we might as well just go to the end of the line. On the opposite side, on the secondary fuel filter, there's also a bleed screw, but we're not going to use that one either. We would use that if we were just changing this one filter, but since we're doing the whole system, we'll just crack it loose here at the injection pump, and we'll go pump the little plunger on the transfer pump, and when fuel comes out here, the whole system should be bled. Now we have to bleed the actual injector lines themselves. So we've got fuel to here. We need to get fuel from here through the pump up to the injectors. Now I've got it loose. The line's loose here at the pump. We're going to bleed it at this point first because I've had problems with these extension tubes leaking. So we're going to use the injection pump to kind of flush out those connections. So our shutoff is on. We're going to put it at full throttle. Here we go. What did I do wrong? Why do I have no starter? Well, that's fun. All the batteries are good. You can hear the solenoid clicking for the cold start, the manifold heater. Well, it wouldn't be one of my videos without some electrical work. So let's figure that out. I think I see the problem. Oh boy. Well, these two are being stubborn, but I've got 3 out of 6. That should be enough to get it started. Well, fiddlesticks. I cracked the T right there. Over tightened the threads, I guess. Wonder how hard it is to find one of those. Probably not easy. Well, technically this thing should run. Guess let's try to fire it up and see how bad it leaks from that broken fitting. Alright folks, we got 15 gallons of non-biodiesel in the tank. We're going to add some snake oil. Now previously, I took a lot of heat for the way I poured this concoction into the tank. Apparently, some kind of mechanic's life hack. You're supposed to turn the jug upside down and pour it like this. And then it's not supposed to spill at all. So let's give it a try.
Oh dear. Oh my. Oh, well, it's kind of working. Success? Oh. I'd say it works about as good as any other life hack. Enough of that nonsense. The original fuel cap was looking pretty shabby. I scraped most of the rust and crust out of the bottom, but I have no way to get into these crevices and clean that, so I figured it was worth spending $8 to splurge on a new cap. I managed to find and install a new T in the #1 injector. There's the part number from our friends at American Grease Stick Corporation, manufacturers of the world famous Sil-Glide silicone-based grease. They only had one, but I went ahead and ordered 5 more. This one here on #3 that was leaking when we were doing the bleeding, it's also cracked, so I'm just going to replace all 6 of them. It's like $19 or something to do all of them. And yeah, I'm not sure these are the right return lines, but it should work fine if I can get the fittings replaced. Also, I had some leaks on the extension tubes. Same thing that happened to me the last time I messed with this pump. I just had to crack the banjo bolts loose and then, torque those to death. And it seems to be fine now. Alright guys, we're getting pretty close. I think I've changed all the filters. I did the screen in the sediment bowl, the 2 fuel filters, engine oil filter, air filter, hydropower filter, and hydraulic filter. We've got new oil, new coolant, new fuel. I topped off the hydraulic oil. Yeah, we're pretty close. I think tomorrow I'm going to run it outside and we'll pressure wash it again. I can't pressure wash it today. The wind is just howling out there. It's blowing so hard I threw the ball for the dog and it actually ended up behind me. Look at that. Chevy Celebrity Wagon? Still on the road in Illinois? Anyway, that wind yesterday was incredible. It's still blowing a little bit, but nothing like yesterday. We had sustained 50-mile-an-hour winds for like 12 hours straight. I think that's like 80 kilometers an hour. And down here in the field, there was water standing knee-deep over that whole section there that's kind of colored dark brown. And the wind dried it completely out. Anyway, got a lot of stuff going on around here. I don't know if you guys can see it, but there's an excavator driving behind that truck. They're digging up some tiles. I got this chipper truck that got to fix. It's got a list as long as my arm. Got this John Deere 6400. It needs a radiator and a stepper motor for the 3-point hitch. Don't worry about that. We'll talk about that later. Still got the lifts. I had bought this old JLG man lift a while back as a project. I can't fix it. We're going to scrap it. Got a John Deere 2940 back there. That's one I did that head gasket on. It needs to be split and new seals put on the input shaft of the transmission. And the Oliver still here. Alright folks, the Oliver is done, at least for right now. Obviously I reinstalled the loader and the sheet metal, and I did install the rest of those T-fittings in the return lines for the injectors, so everything's sealed up now. Relatively well. Still a few minor leaks, but it's pretty good. Also, it starts good and it runs good, better than I can remember it ever running. The injectors and the injection pumps had problems for a very long time. So I couldn't be happier with the work that Area Diesel did on that pump and injectors. And please check out their videos if you want to see how that work is done. And if you have a need for fuel injection or turbocharger or any other kind of diesel type work,
you know, give them a call. And if you mention Watch West Work, like I said, they have a shipping promotion, so it even sweetens the deal a little bit more. So we're going to move on for now. There's a few things we still need to fix. The PTO is leaking pretty bad. I'm going to have to do that. And then it's going to need tires before too long. Tires and rims. I don't know if you can see, but the rims are in pretty bad shape. And these tires, yeah, boy, they're pretty tired. Sidewalls are all cracked out. So I've got a set of wheel weights I want to put on it, so we're going to have to pull the wheels off anyway. And then this one hub has walked out on the axle, so I need to move that back in. Hopefully I can move that back in. Sometimes it can be really, really stuck. And then, I don't know, there's a few hoses and stuff that need to be repaired. I think the boot's leaking for the gear shifter. Got to do something about that. But overall, it's in pretty good shape. There's a couple things I need from you guys. If you have a source for a rebuild kit for the mechanical lift pump here, I was unable to get that from Agco. So if you have a line on where to find one of those, or if there's a better Agco dealer that can actually find parts, let me know. And then also, if you guys remember the Oliver 770 tractor that I had in here back before Christmas, I can't get cylinder liners for it. I tried at Reliance. That's where I've always bought parts for these old tractors. They can't get cylinder liners for it until July. And I've already been waiting since Christmas. And we checked with another source. They don't have them either. So if anybody knows where to, I can get everything else. The pistons, the rings, the bearings, the gaskets, but I cannot get the liners. So if anybody knows of somebody who has 6 liners for an Oliver 770, let me know. They have to be, I think, 3 5/8 bore diameter in order to work with the pistons that I can get. So anyway, thanks guys for watching. That was kind of a long video. Thanks for sticking it out, and I'll see you next time.